So hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. We're going to take a little tour of some of my gear and look at some other gear that I'm going to need for an upcoming tour. And I'll tell you all about it right after this. On my YouTube channel, you will find a variety of video products including my arts and entertainment video podcast, Other Stages. Other Stages features music, stories, and thoughtful conversations with guests from across the entertainment spectrum. Also on YouTube, you will find my music videos that feature my original work and the classical repertoire. The Organ Technology series explores the fascinating ways in which organs have been built through history. You can sponsor my YouTube channel by joining me on Patreon, where you will receive exclusive Patreon-only content as a thank you for your support. You can also support my work at Venmo and PayPal, and you will always find these links in the video descriptions. My YouTube channel is not monetized and does not receive any financial support from advertisers. So just like PBS, I rely on people like you. Thanks. So when an artist goes out on a music tour, there's a bunch of upfront costs that have to be covered by the artist. Now this is, when you hear about a newly signed artist taking a big advance from the record company, well, a big part of that is to pay for some of the on-stage gear that they're going to need to facilitate the tour. Now the big stuff like the big house PA system, if you're playing at a festival or an arena, that's usually covered by the concert promoter, and that goes out as a rider. If you want this artist to play, you have to provide these certain things. But the on-stage gear, the instrument they're going to be seated at playing, the mic, perhaps the microphone they're using, if they want a particular in-ear monitor system, all of that is covered by the artist. And like I said, if you have a record contract, you get an advance to pay for a bunch of that stuff. But if you're an independent artist like me, well, you're going to have to come up with the funds for that all on your own. So the tour I'm talking about is something I've mentioned a few times on this show, is I'm working with the Fisk Planetarium in Boulder, Colorado, and we're developing a live music visual extravaganza centered around my ambient experimental music. We are currently going to work out two shows. One show will be based on my first album, Segments, and then there's going to be a second show based on the Cassini mission that I will write all new music for. In fact, I've already worked out some of the themes and things I want to use for the Cassini music. I'm really excited about doing this, and what's going to happen is we're going to do some shows in Boulder, Colorado at the Fisk Planetarium, and from there the show is going to be shopped out to planetariums around the country, and so I have to be prepared to show up for a fee and play the live music while they run the video on the planetarium dome. So first, let's take a look at the gear I have right now, and then we'll take a look at the gear I'm going to need for the tour. So right now I'm seated at what I affectionately call the Porta Organ, and basically we have a MIDI controller connected to my computer, and there's a pipe organ simulator on there that uses sample playback. The top keyboard is a product that Roland used to build. It's their C200 model organ, and it's really just a single manual instrument. And so I have a variety of pipe organ sounds available from each of these. I can control the computer software and maneuver around to different sounds. I also have a pedal board which controls sounds both on the computer and on the C200. And all of this is great here in the studio. I can record all the music in any way I want. In fact, the first album, which is going to be available soon on Bandcamp and for sale as a CD if you still want a hard copy of things, I actually recorded it on this multi-track machine and this keyboard all by itself, and got fantastic results. From that point I upgraded. I've got Studio One software on the computer, and all of this plugs into that, and I can record whatever I need to record. And so here in the studio everything works great. Now when I'm working with my music, the ambient experimental music uses a lot of echo and reverb effects, and so I have these two processors over here on the rack, and there I can get a variety of different echo and reverb effects to create the rhythmic things I like to do. If I do that without the effects, it's just not quite as interesting. Now, on the old machine I had to record everything kind of in time and with the effects already in, but with the computer software I have all these wonderful effects available to me. So I record just the notes and then add the effects later, and everything again comes off of here because this plugs in well. So I also have a basic looper pedal so that I can get those layered effects I like to do. And you can add on to that. Now, I just did a brief live performance of one of my pieces there, and using this gear, so one might think, wow, you can just pick all this up, take it to the show. I wish it were that easy because dragging the computer around with its software is, it's just a regular desktop computer. That's not going to be a really practical or reliable thing. The effects devices, I have to reach over if I need to change the effect. There's all kinds of things I can't do with the basic looper. With the basic looper, I can prove out ideas. Is something I've come up with in my head going to really work when I go to do this with a looper pedal? I can prove that out on the basic looper, but many of the things that are in the recordings that I would like to recreate live are simply not possible with that basic looper pedal. Now, over the last couple of years, I had my Rogers Model 825 in the living room, and I did a lot of shows. I did a weekly show. It started out as a live stream, then it became a recorded thing. And I played a lot of my original music on the 825, and I just set up the looper pedal and the effects processors on the 825 and just kind of made it work. Well, I didn't really play the complete versions as they exist on the recording. I had to play abridged versions and simplified versions, because with the gear I currently have, I just cannot recreate exactly the music that was recorded on the studio record. So some things are going to have to change here in order to make this all work. Now, one of the things I have would be to have two of these, or two similar of these keyboards. Then I can have two distinct sounds running at the same time, also with distinct outputs. Looping, to do the complex looping that appears on the record and do that live, I really need a multi-track looping device to really make that work. And then, of course, being able to control everything at the push of a button with, say, my right foot, which is the one thing that kinda isn't completely busy all the time when I'm playing my music. So having a second keyboard that is a standalone instrument, having a multi-track looper, having a foot controller that will change presets, switch to different effects patches, all at the push of a button, that's what's needed to make this all work as a live performance thing. So, looking at the setup I have here in the studio, it's really more than I need to make recordings of my music. And through the magic of multi-track recording, I can take that one organ, single manual organ, and morph it into anything. I can also go and record off of the big Johannes organ or the Rogers Theater organ. I can make all of those things work, and I can do anything I want effects wise to create those rhythmic patterns and those lush enveloping reverbs that I like, in the software. But when we got to take this out live and perform it in person, that becomes a very different matter. So, what the live rig really needs to consist of is two of those single manual organs. I already have one, the Roland C200, and there's a number of used instruments and current instruments. Any of the Viscount Cantorum series would work. There's the Decibel L3. There's the Johannes 1. Any of those instruments will work. On the used market, there's of course the C200, if I can round up one of those. There's the previous model, I believe was called the C190. Any of those would work as that second keyboard. But because I am in the organ business and I have some connections, I have a chance to get for wholesale this instrument, the Decibel Classico L3. Now, this instrument is very similar to the Roland C200 that I currently have. It would sit nicely above the Roland C200. This would really be an excellent solution for that second keyboard, and I can get it at the wholesale price of $1,700. Now, like I also pointed out with the looper situation, to really recreate my live music exactly like it is on the recording, I really need a multi-track looping system. The reason is I can't just put like two basic loopers on the floor connected to each keyboard, because they won't stay in sync. And so a single looper unit that's a multi-track system, that will all stay in sync. This is the Boss 505 Mark II, and it is a 5-channel multi-track looper system. It also has multi-effects processors that all the reviews indicate are really excellent. It's very possible that this unit would replace would take care of the looping and the effects processing all as one thing, and it has multiple inputs, multiple outputs. It's really a fantastic piece of equipment and would make live performances of my music possible. The Boss the Boss 505 MK2 is about a $700 investment once you're all in. Now, all of this needs to be controlled somehow, and that's where MIDI comes into play. In performing this music live, I have to not only change the sound palette kind of instantaneously, I sometimes have to change the effects soundscape in one shot as well. Now, the effects processors I have will operate from MIDI, and I can switch from one preset to the next. And the Boss 505 also has presets that cover both how the sound is routed into the multi-track looping, how the effects are patched in and channeled, and that can all be controlled from a MIDI controller, and that's where this unit, the Nectar Pacer, comes into play. This unit, all of the foot switches you see on this are programmable to send out various types of MIDI messages. And what that means is I can program this unit to control all of the equipment. It'll control the presets on the 505. It will control the changes if I have to go ahead and use the external effects processors. It will take care of all of that at the push of a button. I also then would have the option of controlling the on-off record stop functions of the looper from with either my foot or my hands, depending on what happens to be free at any given moment. So it looks like the Boss 505 would be really the centerpiece of the whole setup and would handle all of the special effects things I need. But until I get one here set up and start working with it, I don't know that for sure. A lot of the effects, reverb effects that I create in the studio are done with a lot of studio trickery to create really these impossible reverbscapes. To do that live, well, that becomes a little trickier. Sometimes I just have to accept that, well, the live reverb effect isn't going to be the same as the studio reverb effect. The other issue is that any room I happen to be in is going to have reverb of its own, and I will have to be able to compensate for that so that I'm not, let's say, like the Griffith Observatory, the planetarium there has a lot of reverb, if you've ever been to a show there. So my final reverb on the live performance would have to be adjusted. So an optional piece of equipment that would really do well with this is the Strymon Night Sky. Like I say, this piece would really be an optional piece, but it would really do some wonderful things. This creates the multi-layered reverb effects I like to do in the studio environment, and does so. It has presets, it responds to MIDI. I mean, it would be an easy piece of equipment to use, but it's about $500 to get a hold of one of these. So like I say, this one's optional, so it may have to let that one go. Now, of course, I may have to take a certain amount of PA gear with me. Most planetariums have pretty good sound systems that I could plug into, but I still would need to have something to monitor the music for me up close, because who knows where the sound system speakers are. And if that sound system has some deficiencies that I need to make up for, usually it'll be in the bass end, I may need to take some subwoofers and PA speakers with me to kind of fill it in. The other thing I'm probably going to need is an in-ear monitor system. And again, the Boss 505 becomes a wonderful centerpiece for the live rig, because I can have a separate mix within the 505 that goes to the headphones, and a different mix that goes out to the PA system. So that allows me to make sure that those rhythmic effects are maybe a little louder for me than they need to be for the audience, so that I can stay in time as I'm playing the music. Most independent artists like myself, when they're getting ready for a tour, because we don't have that advance from the record company, well, we usually have to raise that initial funding to go out on the tour up front ourselves, and GoFundMe and Indiegogo and other crowdfunding sites are really popular for that. And just like PBS, when they're doing their pledge breaks, you have to have something to give back for people throwing out a little of their money so that I can go out on tour. So that's one of the next things I've got to really think about, is how am I going to come up with some appropriate perks. Things like signed copies of the CD, that might be something nice. Maybe there's some merch I can come up with that might be fun. The Fisk Planetarium is certainly willing to throw out some free tickets. I don't know how willing the other planetariums are going to be to throw some free tickets so that I can hand those out as perks as the tour comes together and develops. So this is something I have to really put some thought into, how we're going to make that work and make it really equitable for those folks that are wanting to put some money into this project. It's a little weird, I know, but it's kind of like starting a small business, right? You have to have the storefront and you have to have the inventory before you can open the door and start selling anything. For musicians, I have to have the onstage gear and some money set aside for travel expenses before I can get to the gig, do the gig, and collect my fee. So it's really, it's a business. It's a business process, and those who are putting money into it up front are really investing in a business. And that's the way I see it, and that's a way we can kind of think about this in terms of how we put all of this together. So I hope you found this all interesting. That's what's going on, and that's kind of my next step in getting my music out on the road and into the ears of the general public. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.